why are peak states of consciousness so powerful? You get into a different state of awareness, and it's just like climbing a mountain, right? You start to get a higher perspective on your life, especially the problems in your life. And then you continue hiking up the peak. And as you hike higher and higher up this peak, eventually you're going to get above the clouds and you climb to the top and you feel yourself in front of the sun. And this is the moment when you remember.
This is your invitation to become the alchemist of your life. You decode your heaven on earth and go through the alchemical process. The alchemist is a master of himself so that he can master life. People thought alchemists were turning lead into gold, but they're really crystallizing their soul into form. Alchemize your golden potential. Welcome to the golden life.
Welcome to the Golden Life. My name's David Gilbert, and today I'm going to help you become the alchemist that can transmute a peak experience into gold. And this episode's for you if you are ready to accelerate your growth and healing by having an altered state of consciousness experience. Now, what do I mean by that? And we can use other words, a peak state of consciousness or a altered state of consciousness. And this is modalities like breathwork journeys, meditation, psychedelics, flow states, trance states where you dance yourself into a trance, or even endurance activities can sometimes put you in this almost outer body experience. But it's really when you lose sense of time, you get lost in the deep now, and you come out of this peak experience feeling renewed. And why are peak states of consciousness so powerful? Well, first of all, they offer you this non-ordinary state of consciousness, which is really to say you're not in your usual beta brainwave, busy daily life mode. You get into a different state of awareness. And when I share this with the people I work with, I use the metaphor of climbing a peak state of consciousness. And it's just like climbing a mountain. What happens when you set up and create one of these peak experiences is that it's like you going on an adventure to the top of a peak. And it starts off with you at base camp of your ordinary life, and you hear the call for adventure, and you gather all your supplies, and you set up the mountain. And as you do, you start hiking, and eventually you're gonna get above the tree line. And that can be the metaphor for your ordinary life, right? You start to get a higher perspective on your life, especially the problems in your life. And then you continue hiking up the peak. And as you hike higher and higher up this peak, eventually you're going to get above the clouds. And the moment that you do that, you are going to see the sun and feel its rays hit you. And you climb to the top and you feel yourself in front of the sun. And this is the metaphor for the moment when you remember. You remember who you really are. Remember your true home. You might even remember what you came to do in this lifetime. And this is what modalities like non-ordinary states of consciousness, they give us access to. They give us access to sometimes take a peek beyond the veil of ordinary life and acknowledge the illusion of separation, to see how we're all connected in some way. Or sometimes we climb the peak and we have this insight, this remembering of some past pain that we experienced. Or we have the opposite. We actually get a glimpse of our golden potential, which I can share from my own experience is actually a little bit more challenging or scary than seeing some of your past pain. Or sometimes you just carve out the space and you have a peak experience and you just feel so connected to a friend or loved one, maybe the earth or the universe itself, that you just feel fulfilled. And that's the power of carving out space in your life to consciously create these peak experiences. Because we know one thing for sure, and that is the fact that life will send you valleys. But we can counterbalance this by consciously creating peaks. And this is why the men's group that I co-founded with 2 other guys, we have it on a quarterly basis because we wanted to consciously create bumpers in our lives to take time out of our busy, ordinary life to just have space to be and to use modalities like breathwork to send us into an altered state so we can access the sun, so we can come back to take that higher perspective on life, so we can feel the warmth of the sun, and we can go home more connected, more loving, and have more faith in higher power or even just ourselves because we feel more connected. Now, here's the thing. If you're new to exploring altered states of consciousness, know the metaphor is also the sun, because if you spend too much time on the top of the mountain, it's gonna burn you. A lot of the things that I'm talking about are highly addictive, right? Sexuality, psychedelics, plant medicines, trance states, people love their raves, even flow states. Fun fact, group flow is known as the most addicting state there is. And we can all get addicted to peak experiences and just wanting to chase the shiny light of peak experience after peak experience after peak experience. And we've been warned in the myths and legends about what happens when you fly too close to the sun. And I've also seen this with people, especially as you start to explore these modalities yourself, of people who spend way too much time in the sunlight and they don't bring themselves back down to earth. So why is it just as critical to hike back down the mountain? And that is to say, to be the alchemist is to consciously create a peak experience, to consciously go into a non-ordinary state of consciousness, to grab the insight or grab the healing or grab the inspiration that you need. But to be the alchemist is to bring that back down with you and ultimately manifest that insight or healing or connection into gold. And how do we do this? Well, this is where we can go back in time, back to the Middle Ages, when they didn't have electricity and they basically lived off of fire. So you know what they used to do? Well, they would get a metal box and they would take a smolder from a fire and they would put it in the box. And they would carry this box with them everywhere they went. And this was their lifeline. And they kept the smolder alive by constantly feeding it tinder, constantly giving it little pieces of wood or this or that to keep that smolder burning. And this is how we explore peak state of consciousness. But then you have to grab that spark of inspiration or healing or connection, and you got to put it in your box and bring it with you back down the mountain so that you still have it come Monday morning. And this is to really highlight the importance of integration. And to take it a step further, to really be the alchemist is you don't stop at integration. You actually go through the whole process of integration to embodiment to crystallization. And this is something I'll share more about in future episodes, but just to give you a better idea, let's say you go through a cathartic or healing experience. Maybe you did a breathwork journey and some past situation came up that you completely forgot about, and it caused yourself or somebody else a lot of pain. And now you got to bring this back with you back to Monday morning. And I use the metaphor of healing is really just you losing parts of yourself in the past, right? Like a piece of glass that gets shattered. There's a part of you, let's say something happened in childhood, that you didn't have the capability to emotionally process or to make meaning of this experience. And that was like a piece of you that got broken off and left in the past. And those emotions stay in you. And when you go through, let's say, a breathwork journey and you bring that piece back, you allow those emotions to be expressed, you remember that memory, and now you have the tools to integrate it. So integrating that is really just bringing that piece of you back to the present moment and accepting whatever you went through and then learning how to work with it. But to take that a step further, you can start to create it into gold by seeing you not only integrate that experience, but then you embody a new insight. So let's say it taught you something about life. You went through a painful experience, but it taught you about a beautiful truth about life. So now you get to embody that. And then after you embody that long enough, it will become who you are. And you will completely shift and completely crystallize into a new person and hopefully be a little bit more full, a little bit more whole, and have a little bit more love in your heart. So this is an overview of how we can consciously create these peak states, but just as importantly, integrate them. Because if you do this, you can really accelerate your growth and healing. I've seen it from the people I've worked with, as well as my own experience. But just remember, it's not about living on the top of the peak. It's about bringing that spark that you get and carrying it with you through your ordinary way of life. So thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope this inspires you. And if you are interested in exploring a non-ordinary state of consciousness, well, just reach out, because I do offer breathwork journeys, which will take you into yourself and create an altered state experience where you have your foot on both the gas and the brake. So I think it's one of the greatest peak states that you can consciously create yourself and truly live as the alchemist. So if this episode brought you some new insight or gave you some new knowledge that's going to help you on the path, my big ask is to hit that like, subscribe, or leave a review. Thank you, and stay golden.